This particular vehicle in Unsung Heroes bucks two major trends that tend to pop up over and over again in this series, and they are, one, that most of the cars that we talk about tend to be a little bit older, be it the 80s, 60s, 50s, whatever the case may be. This one is not. This is, believe it or not, a brand new vehicle, a 2019 car. But the second thing is that, and this is the much more prevalent one, the vast majority of cars in Unsung Heroes, almost by definition, tend to be failures. Cars that try to achieve something, maybe win a race or set a speed record or just reach production in some cases, and they don't. They fail. And that, more often than not, explains their obscurity. But sometimes you get a car that actually didn't fail, something that has amazing success in a particular way and still just isn't all that well known. Something like the Koenigsegg-powered LeBlanc Mirabeau or the Oldsmobile Aerotech, just two examples of cars which were brilliant and still aren't all that well known. This, I would say, is another such occasion, because you might be thinking that this car looks a little familiar. It's got kind of a 60s Lola or even Jaguar vibe to it. And there's a very good reason for that, because of course, as any of you older racing fans and Jaguar racing fans will recognise immediately, Ecurie Ecosse has of course a lot of significance to classic Jaguar racing, because Ecurie Ecosse featured in Grand Prix, they were in Le Mans, they won Le Mans in 56 and 57, they were a great little team, a Scottish team in fact, based in Edinburgh, and incidentally even their name, Ecurie Ecosse, means Scottish stable, so kind of like the Scottish equivalent of Scuderia Ferrari, if you will. Now this particular car, as I said, is brand new, but it probably still looks familiar. In fact, there's a reason for that, because this is, I think, a brilliant idea. This isn't some restored classic race car, it's not some forgotten race car from a barn somewhere back in the day, and interestingly, it's not a one-off either. This is a limited run production vehicle, and what it's designed to do is reimagine history. Because, as many of you who are Gran Turismo fans here on the channel will know, Jaguar made a stillborn race car, if you will, back in the 60s called the XJ13, a phenomenal looking British racing green car with a Targa top, a very stunning looking engine array which you can see through the glass with a 5-litre V12, just over 500 horses, and it would have been a stunning rival to Ferrari and the Ford GT40s and the Lolas at the time, in 1966, but homologation rules changed, and the car was never raced. Only one was built in that original spec, and it was crashed in 1971, whereafter it was restored to its original glory, and now it's in the British Motor Museum. But that is where this car comes in, because in an eerily reminiscent way of how phenomenally TWR Performance overhauled the XJ220 into the stunning XJ220S, this is a similar occasion, because what Ecurie Ecosse have done is they've reimagined history. What if that XJ13 had raced? What if it continued to race and continued to evolve under 60s authentic FIA regulations, including 25 road-going examples being produced? This is basically a modern homologation special. How awesome is that? Because this is, in effect, their idea of what an XJ13 could have ended up looking like by 1969, and that's why, of course, this car is called the LM69. Now, in terms of performance, they wanted to be as authentic as possible to the time period, and that includes the homologation and rules thereof, as I said. But that's not only producing 25 cars, they actually handcuffed themselves when it comes to engineering, because they wanted the car to be authentic to the rules of the time, but also the parts and the ability of the time. So this does not have any modern racing advantages, no active aero, no ABS, none of that kind of stuff. It's not hybrid, as if you'd expect it would be. It's an authentic, modern 60s car. And even down to the engine, it feels authentic to that original. It's still a quad-cam, mid-mounted, 5.3-litre now, V12 engine, and the option is there, should a customer choose it, to actually bore and stroke that engine out to 7.3 litres if you want to, which is a very reminiscent spec to a Pagani Zonda, but with 60s style. That, I think, is pretty awesome. But one thing that I love about the car as well from a design point of view is not only is it stunning, of course heavily reworked from the XJ13, not just with the iconic Ecurie Ecosse paint with the blue and white, but also with kind of a long tail going on at the back with a fixed wing. It has a fixed hardtop, the winglets on the front bumper as well. But also beyond that, this car looks authentic. It actually looks old, and I don't just mean the design, I mean even stuff like some of the dustiness that certain body panels on this car has. It gives it this authentic old school vibe. It doesn't look like a new car, it looks like it actually is 50 years old, and I think that's awesome. But perhaps the cherry on top is the price tag, because in 1996, somebody actually tried to buy the original XJ13 from the museum, and they offered them £7 million for it. They rejected the offer, and yet this car today, with 25 produced, will cost you £750,000. That is quite the steal, in my opinion, compared to that original, given that this is faster, has a more powerful engine, better aerodynamics, and is even lighter than that original car, despite holding itself to authentic 1969 technology and regulations. In my opinion, this is one of the very few, possibly even the only one that I can think of, vehicles on the market that can actually outperform the Eagle Speedster at its own game. This idea of a modern interpretation that is faithful to the original but built to a modern standard. This does it even better, I think, than the Eagle does. That's a stunning car, a very expensive one, and a highly collectible one, but to me this just goes to the next level, because this isn't just an homage, this is a reimagining of history. And I wish more people would do stuff like this, because I think it's so cool. And as if the performance and the looks and the price weren't enough, it's also road legal, at least here in the UK, so you can actually drive this thing on the street. It just keeps getting better and better when it comes to news about this car. So ultimately, I'm kind of surprised that this car isn't better known than it is, because there's no downsides to this thing. It's an awesome, faithful reinterpretation of what could have happened, which has all the kind of pedigree, the company behind it even, the handcrafted, ultra-exclusive, and certainly expensive nature that it has. It ticks every box that you would want a car like this to have. And of course it won't be racing anytime soon, but if you are a fan of this car and of this particular episode, I would strongly recommend jumping down to the link below, which takes you over to the live chat on Discord for this channel, where you can actually vote if you love this car in the polls on there of every single car that we've talked about so far in the series, because as I said, once we reach episode 100, I'm going to be counting down the top 10 community favourite episodes of the entire series so far. So, of course, this one will be in there as an option, so if you love the car, jump over there and vote for it, and until next time, I'll see you then. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.